Loved ones held funeral services for some of the victims in the Joliet crime spree. 7 of the 8 victims were remembered today.
On a frigid Sunday afternoon in January 2024, doorbell cameras across the 2,200 block of West Acres Road in Joliet, Illinois, captured something that would haunt this quiet neighborhood forever. Snow covered the streets, and families were settling in for a typical winter evening. But 23-year-old Romeo Nance was about to turn this ordinary day into the deadliest mass shooting in Illinois history. At one house, a doorbell camera captured Romeo Nance walking up to the front door, gripping a stolen assault rifle. "Hi, Dad," a small child's voice could be heard saying from inside. What happened next defies comprehension. "Daddy, why? Don't shoot me!" the child cried out as Romeo opened fire inside his own family's home. Before we dive deeper into this unthinkable tragedy, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. By the end of January 21st, 2024, 8 people would be dead across multiple locations in Joliet. 7 of them were Romeo's own family members, his mother, his siblings, his aunt and uncle, people who trusted him, who loved him, who never saw it coming. The next day, Romeo would be found dead by U.S. Marshals over 1,000 miles away in Texas, having taken his own life rather than face what he had done. But this massacre didn't start on January 21st. Police records show Romeo had been building toward this violence for years, with a history that included armed robbery, road rage shootings, and domestic disturbances. Authorities had been called to these same West Acres Road homes at least 14 times since April 2022. The warning signs were there. The question is, why didn't anyone see what was coming? This is Accused, where we go beyond the headlines to uncover the truth behind cases that shake entire communities. Hit that subscribe button if you want to dive deep into cases that matter. Your support helps us bring you the investigative details that mainstream media often misses. The Joliet family massacre stands as one of the most shocking cases of family annihilation in recent American history. In what police called a reign of terror, Romeo Nance systematically destroyed his own bloodline in a single afternoon. "I've been a policeman 29 years. This is probably the worst crime scene I've ever been associated with," Joliet Police Chief Bill Evans told reporters. Tonight, we're uncovering the evidence the media glossed over, the domestic violence calls that went unanswered, the criminal history that escalated unchecked, and the final hours when a family's Sunday dinner became their last meal together. We may never know Romeo's true motive, as investigators themselves admit. We may never know the truth or motives behind these senseless killings. But we can piece together how a young man turned into a family destroyer and examine the system failures that allowed this tragedy to unfold. This is the story of how trust became betrayal, how blood became nothing, and how one man's violence nearly erased an entire family line in the span of 90 minutes. Romeo Nance was 23 years old, the son and brother who should have been protecting his family, not destroying it. His victims weren't strangers. They were the people closest to him. His mother, Tamyaka Nance, was 47 years old and the family matriarch. His sisters Alexandria was 20, Alana was 16, and Angel was just 14. His older brother Joshua was 31. His aunt Christine Esters was 38, and his uncle William Esters II was 35. The family lived in 2 homes directly across the street from each other on West Acres Road, a quiet residential block near St. Joseph Hospital in Joliet. Romeo's last known address was right on this same block, where the crimes would unfold. This wasn't a family torn apart by distance or estrangement. They were so close they could wave to each other from their front porches. Each family member had made their mark on the Joliet community. Christine worked as a corrections treatment officer for the Illinois Department of Corrections. The younger siblings were active in sports. Alana was known as Lucky to her friends and was a junior at Joliet West High School, while Alexandria had graduated in 2022. They were involved in track and field, wrestling, and cheerleading through various local organizations. But beneath this picture of family closeness, Trouble had been brewing for years. Romeo had a violent criminal history that included armed robbery with a knife in 2019, where he pressed the blade against someone's chest outside a tobacco store. In January 2023, he fired multiple shots at a woman during a road rage incident, with bullets striking both her car and a nearby home. Most telling of all, authorities had been called to the two-family homes on West Acres Road at least 14 times since April 2022. The signs of escalating violence were documented, but no one could have predicted how far Romeo would go. By Sunday evening, January 21st, 2024, Romeo had armed himself with both a stolen assault rifle and a handgun. His girlfriend Kylie Cleveland Singleton and their 3-year-old son were with him as he prepared to cross the street and enter the homes where his family waited, unsuspecting. What happened next would make this quiet residential block the scene of Illinois' deadliest mass shooting and leave a community asking how someone could systematically execute the very people who loved him most. Sunday, January 21st, 2024, started like any other winter weekend in Joliet. Snow covered the ground, families were settling in after church, and Romeo Nance was texting his friend John Hanson. But these weren't ordinary texts. Hanson and Romeo Nance were longtime friends and associates, and at 12:18 p.m., immediately after the Nance family was murdered, text messages showed Hanson telling his girlfriend that Romeo was picking him up and that they were going to torch set, adding, "Just know I ain't playing." What authorities pieced together from surveillance footage, cell phone records, and witness testimony reveals a calculated sequence of events that began with family murder and escalated into random community violence. John Hanson, a 24-year-old Shorewood resident with an extensive Will County criminal history, would later tell detectives that he was with Romeo Nance beginning around 3:30 p.m. on January 21st. But the killing had already started hours earlier. Sometime that afternoon, Romeo walked into the first family home on West Acres Road where his mother, Tamiaka, and Uncle William Esters II were present. At least one person in the neighborhood saw Romeo Nance running with his rifle in his hand between his family's two houses that Sunday afternoon, and people in the neighborhood did, in fact, hear multiple gunshots. However, nobody in the neighborhood called and notified the Joliet Police Department about what they saw or heard. After killing his mother and uncle, Romeo crossed the street to the second family home. This is where the doorbell camera captured that chilling audio, his 3-year-old son saying, "Hi, Dad," followed by, "Daddy, why? Don't shoot me," as Romeo opened fire on 5 more family members. The child's mother, Kylie Cleveland Singleton, was allegedly present and stuck around as Nance headed for the second home. With 7 family members dead across 2 homes, Romeo wasn't finished. He had made plans with Hanson to continue the violence, but now their targets would be complete strangers. The family murders were personal, but what came next was pure randomness. Innocent people in the wrong place at the wrong time, about to become victims of 2 armed men looking for more blood to spill. By 3:30 p.m., Romeo was picking up Hanson and Hanson's girlfriend in the red Toyota Camry, registered to one of his murder victims. According to prosecutors, Hanson said Romeo told him he killed 6 people when he picked him up. The 3 of them would spend the next hour driving around Joliet, armed and dangerous, looking for random targets to complete Romeo's reign of terror. At exactly 4:15 p.m., Romeo Nance drove by a 42-year-old man who was getting items out of his car in the 200 block of Davis Street in Joliet. Nance briefly stopped, and the two exchanged words before Nance drove on. After the man crossed the street, Nance returned from the other direction and opened fire, striking the man in the leg before driving away. What surveillance cameras captured next was the cold-blooded nature of this attack. In the video obtained by the Sun-Times, a red Toyota Camry connected to Nance was seen driving around 4:20 p.m. Sunday on the 200 block of Davis Road, and the driver is seen opening fire. Nance allegedly fired 9 shots in about 5 seconds as the 42-year-old man was walking back to his home. Curtis Ellis, who had lived on Davis Street for nearly 4 decades, was inside watching the NFL playoff game between the Detroit Lions and Tampa Bay Buccaneers when the shots rang out. "I captured a serial killer on my video that I didn't even know I was doing," Ellis said. Ellis says his neighbor was just an innocent bystander trying to get water bottles out of his truck when Nance comes in and just tries to kill him. But this wasn't just Romeo acting alone. According to prosecutors, Hansen said Romeo asked the victim on Davis if he gangbanged, and the victim said he didn't speak English. Then Romeo started shooting. The victim, Mario Guerrero, was simply unloading groceries from his vehicle when 3 strangers pulled up and changed his life forever. Hansen admitted to holding the gun used for the Davis Street shooting. Before the shooting, they went to 7-Eleven in Shorewood, and Romeo told him to get a pair of gloves. This wasn't spontaneous violence. It was planned, calculated, and methodical. Romeo had systematically murdered his entire family, and now he was turning that same cold precision on random members of the community. The 9 shots fired in 5 seconds left Mario Guerrero wounded but alive, lying on the pavement in front of his own home. "Out of the 9 people shot, my neighbor is the only one to survive, and I'm happy for that, but I pray for the family," Ellis said. Curtis Ellis immediately provided police with the license plate number of the red Toyota Camry, a detail that would prove crucial in the investigation that followed. After the Davis Street shooting, Romeo handed the gun to Hansen. Nance then gave Hansen the gun used to shoot the men, which Hansen threw into the DuPage River, according to police. This act of disposing evidence shows Hansen wasn't just a passive observer, he was an active participant in covering up the crimes. But Romeo wasn't done yet. With one random shooting complete and his accomplice now holding the murder weapon, Romeo drove the stolen Toyota Camry toward their next target. The spree that had started with family betrayal was now becoming a community nightmare, with innocent people being hunted by a man who had already proven he could kill without hesitation or remorse. Remember, multiple neighbors in Joliet saw and heard exactly this scenario, but nobody called police. Keep that in mind as we continue with Romeo's deadly afternoon. Just 10 minutes after the Davis Street shooting, Romeo drove the blood-stained Toyota Camry to his final target. Around 10 minutes later, the Will County Sheriff's Office responded to the Pheasant Run Apartments complex in Preston Heights, where officers discovered 28-year-old Toyosi Bakare with a gunshot wound to the head. Toyosi Bakare was living the American dream. Bakare moved from Nigeria to Illinois about 3 years before the shooting. He had lived at Pheasant Run Apartments since early 2023. Bakare worked for DoorDash full-time and part-time as an information technologist for a local company. Bakare was married, but he did not have any children with his wife. What happened next was captured in chilling detail through Hansen's own confession to police. Hansen stated that he was with Romeo Nance when Toyosi Bakare was shot and killed at the Pheasant Run Apartments in Joliet Township. Hansen stated that the gun used to shoot Toyosi Bakare was a 9mm Glock ghost gun. According to prosecutors, Hansen said Romeo asked Joliet Township murder victim Toyosi Bakare what he was doing and then shot him. Just like that, a hard-working immigrant who had come to America for a better life was executed by a stranger for no reason other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong or a drug deal turned violent. Jungles said the 8th victim, 28-year-old Toyosi Bakare, was taken to a hospital and died of his injuries. He added robbery was not a motive as money was found in the area near where Bakare was located. This was pure random violence carried out by someone who had already proven capable of the unthinkable. The shooting happened around 4:30 p.m., and when they arrived, they found a man later identified as 28-year-old Toyosi Bakare, suffering from a gunshot wound to the eye. Paramedics took Bakare to the hospital, where doctors pronounced him dead. The medical examiner would later determine that the same 9mm handgun used to kill Bakare would be the weapon Romeo used to take his own life in Texas. Hansen's girlfriend was also interviewed on January. 27 by police, and she stated she was present for the shootings as well. Romeo Nance picked up her and the defendant, prosecutor Tricia McKenna outlined. She sat in the back seat. She thought they were going to drive around and smoke and drink. One of them shot the man on Davis. Nance shot the male in the apartment complex. What makes this even more disturbing is that Hanson's pregnant girlfriend was in the car, expecting a casual afternoon of hanging out, only to witness multiple murders. She watched as her boyfriend and his friend systematically targeted innocent people for death. Within the span of 10 minutes, Romeo and Hanson had shot 2 complete strangers, killing one and seriously wounding another. The shootings happened about 2 miles apart, within 10 minutes, according to the Will County Sheriff's Office. This wasn't random chaos. It was organized, methodical violence carried out by 2 armed men who had already crossed every moral boundary. As Toyosi Bakare died at St. Joseph Hospital, Romeo was already planning his escape. He had murdered 8 people in total, 7 family members who trusted him, and 1 innocent stranger who never saw it coming. But investigators were closing in faster than Romeo realized, and his red Toyota Camry had been captured on multiple surveillance cameras. The manhunt was about to begin, and Romeo's reign of terror was finally going to end. But not before one more dramatic confrontation over 1,000 miles away in Texas. As emergency responders rushed to save Toyosi Bakare's life at the hospital, Romeo was already thinking about his next move. He wasn't panicking. This was calculated, methodical planning. With 8 people dead and his accomplice John Hanson in possession of 1 murder weapon, Romeo had to disappear fast. But first, he had some preparations to make. Romeo had dropped off Hanson and Hanson's pregnant girlfriend, but not before buying a cell phone from a Joliet Walmart to stay in touch with his own girlfriend, Kylie Cleveland Singleton. While on the lam, Romeo Nance deleted a social media account and used the phone to frantically search Google, looking for news about the shootings and checking whether he needed a passport to enter Mexico. The red Toyota Camry Romeo was driving was registered to one of his murder victims, but surveillance cameras had captured it at multiple crime scenes. Curtis Ellis had given police the license plate number after witnessing the Davis Street shooting, and investigators quickly connected the vehicle to all 4 shooting locations. Using surveillance footage from the shootings, the sheriff's office was able to identify the perpetrator and vehicle, but were unable to locate either. That Sunday night, as families across Joliet locked their doors in fear, deputies set up surveillance near Nance's home in the 200 block of West Acres Road at around midnight. They were hoping Romeo would return to his last known address, not knowing that inside those houses lay the bodies of 7 family members. After about 12 hours of surveillance, deputies approached Nance's home and spotted blood outside, and subsequently made entry. What they found inside was a scene that would haunt investigators for years. Inside, they found 47-year-old Tamika Nance and 35-year-old William Esters, the second dead of gunshot wounds. Tamika was the mother of the shooter, and William was the shooter's uncle. The sheriff's office then contacted the Joliet Police Department, who checked the second house on the same block because it was inhabited by some of Nance's family members. When officers entered that second home, they discovered 5 more bodies. Inside, they found 38-year-old Christine Esters, 31-year-old Joshua Nance, 20-year-old Alexandria Nance, 14-year-old Angel Nance, and 16-year-old Alana Nance, all dead from gunshot wounds. Police Chief Bill Evans, a 29-year veteran, called it probably the worst crime scene I've ever been associated with. But Romeo was already hundreds of miles away. The FBI Fugitive Task Force was called in to assist Joliet Police and the Will County Sheriff's Office with the investigation. A nationwide manhunt was launched for the red Toyota Camry with Illinois license plate Q730412. Nance then drove south to Texas, where police believe he stopped at a mall and acquired Texas license plates which he put onto his vehicle to attempt to throw authorities off his trail. Romeo was heading toward the Mexican border, over 1,000 miles from the carnage he had left behind. This wasn't a random flight. He had researched whether he needed a passport to enter Mexico, suggesting he had planned an escape route to a country without extradition treaties, but the U.S. Marshals Service was already coordinating with local law enforcement across multiple states, and their net was closing fast. Around 6 p.m. on Monday evening, January 22nd, authorities received word that Romeo Nance was driving along Interstate 35 in the San Antonio, Texas area. Working with federal authorities and other law enforcement officials in Texas, a helicopter was able to locate Nance's car on Interstate 35. The U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force had tracked him down over 1,200 miles from Joliet, closing in on a man who had spent the past 24 hours running from the consequences of his actions. Medina County Sheriff Randy Brown received a call that Romeo Nance was heading into their county. "We had a possible pursuit coming out of Bezar County. It ended up here," Brown later explained. Romeo had affixed stolen Texas plates to the car, but the federal manhunt had eyes everywhere. There was nowhere left to run. At around 8:30 p.m. Central Time, Romeo pulled into Chubby's Travel Center and Valero gas station in Natalia, Texas, just 30 miles southwest of San Antonio and about 115 miles from the Mexican border. This was the end of the line, the final confrontation between a mass murderer and the law enforcement officers who had chased him across the country. The scene that unfolded next was captured by multiple law enforcement agencies. U.S. Marshals surrounded the red Toyota Camry as Romeo realized he was trapped. With police cars blocking every exit and helicopters overhead, Romeo made his final decision. He got out of his car and ran, but there was nowhere to go. U.S. Marshals followed Nance as he ran from the car and rounded the corner of the gas station. Officers and federal agents chased Nance through the parking lot of the travel center. "Basically cornered," Sheriff Brown said, and at some point in there, he took his own life. Romeo Nance took his own life with a handgun following a confrontation with Texas law enforcement officials. The weapon Romeo used to kill himself was the same 9mm handgun he had used to murder Toyosi Bakare at Pheasant Run Apartments. It was poetic justice in a way. The gun that had taken an innocent life now claimed the life of the killer. But Romeo's death also meant that the answers to why he had destroyed his entire family would die with him. Inside the Toyota Camry, authorities found a chilling collection of evidence. Officials found a pistol described as a ghost gun, an AR-15 that had been reported stolen from Indiana in 2003, and ammunition. There were also 2 cell phones, including the one he used to communicate with Cleveland Singleton. The stolen assault rifle recovered in Texas was the same weapon neighbors had seen Romeo carrying between the 2 family homes on West Acres Road. "Mr. Nance's reign of terror on our communities in Will County is now over," said Chief Deputy Dan Jungles. But for the families and the Joliet community, the nightmare was just beginning. With Romeo dead, there would be no trial, no confession, no explanation for why a son and brother had turned into a family annihilator. The gas station in Natalia became the final chapter of a story that had started with family dinner preparations and ended with 8 people dead across 3 crime scenes. Romeo had traveled over 1,000 miles to avoid facing what he had done, but in the end, he couldn't outrun the consequences of his choices. The red Toyota Camry that had carried him through his killing spree was now surrounded by police tape, marking the spot where the deadliest mass shooting in Illinois history had finally come to an end. In the days following Romeo's death in Texas, the city of Joliet struggled to process what had happened in their community. Neighbors on West Acres Road, who had heard gunshots but never called police, now lived with the knowledge that their silence may have cost lives. "This is way too close to home," said Teresa Smart, who lived about a block away from where 7 of the victims were found. "I keep looking out the window and double-checking my doors. It's super scary." The community response was immediate and overwhelming. Joliet Mayor Terry Darcy asked residents and businesses to help raise money to cover the cost of the funerals. When we hear about such tragedies in other parts of the country, we never imagine it could happen close to home, Darcy said. Joliet residents responded to the family in the only way we know how, with prayers and unwavering support. The Esters and Nance families launched a GoFundMe page to assist with the financial burden of upcoming funeral services. Our family will never be the same without Tamiaka, William, Christine, Joshua, Alexandria, Alana, and Angel, the family wrote. But we are confident that we will find the strength to get through this together. We know their lights, legacies, and enormous personalities will live on in our hearts, photos, and memories. On Saturday, February 3, 2024, Victory City Church in Joliet became the focal point for a community's grief. The funeral began at 11 a.m., and a line stretched outside the church for the celebration of life for the slain Esters and Nance family relatives. 7 white caskets, adorned with purple, pink, white, and green flowers, lined the front of the sanctuary, each one representing a life cut short by unthinkable violence. Hundreds of friends, colleagues, and community members took their seats as the Illinois Corrections Honor Guard stood by to salute Christine Esters, who worked as a correctional treatment officer. Sobs hung in the air as the caskets were closed on the victims, and family members struggled to find words for their pain. "I thought I would have words for today, but I don't," said Kara Esters, the surviving member of the immediate family killed, wearing a black veil as family members stood beside her, helping to wipe away tears. "I don't have words for our heartache, and I don't think I ever will." The service became a celebration of 7 distinct lives, each with their own dreams and contributions to the community. Members of the family went on to detail the lives and passions of the 7 victims. They shared stories about Christine getting excited while working in the kitchen to put 2 turkeys on the table during family holidays. "When they'd leave, all we'd have were dishes," one family member said to Laughter from the Room. "We would laugh, and we may have even swapped a couple lies." Coach Nicole Lincoln, who coached the youngest 3 in track and field at the Plainfield-based Rush Athletics, spoke highly of their commitment to sports, which also included wrestling and cheerleading, and of their smiles. "All I can think of is her smile," Lincoln said of Alana's smile, adding that she was known as lucky to friends and family. The service intentionally avoided mentioning Romeo's name. Police haven't determined a motive for Romeo Nance, whose name didn't come up during the funeral services. Instead, the focus remained on celebrating the lives that had been lost, not dwelling on the person who had taken them. As the funeral concluded, pallbearers wheeled the 7 coffins out of Victory City Church. 7 hearses formed a procession to Woodlawn Cemetery, where the family would be laid to rest together. The community that had been shattered by violence was coming together in grief, united in their determination to remember the victims and support the survivors. Today, if you drive through the 2,200 block of West Acres Road in Joliet, you'll see a quiet residential neighborhood trying to heal from an unthinkable tragedy. The 2 houses where 7 family members died remain part of the community, but they carry the weight of history that no neighborhood should have to bear.